3 spine-chilling true stories revealed at dead of night, sinister secrets and haunted encounters. Karen had thought she found peace when she moved with her 2 children to the quiet suburb in Pennsylvania. The chaos of city life faded into a distant memory, replaced by the soft chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. But everything changed the night the phone calls started. At first, they were just annoying heavy breathing on the other end, a giggle that chilled her to the bone. She thought it was just kids playing pranks. Then the whispering began. Slowly, she started to hear something hauntingly familiar. "Don't let them, don't let them." It felt like the words wrapped around her, squeezing her throat tight, casting shadows over her mind. As she walked the familiar streets, illuminated by flickering streetlights, an inexplicable dread settled in. The once friendly neighbors now avoided her gaze. Their laughter, now muted snickers when she passed, grated against her nerves. Dark silhouettes crept from behind trees, lingering just out of sight, as though they formed a secret committee observing her every move. They were watching. She felt it, then the whispers escalated. Late at night, toys shifted position in the living room. Her heart raced, cold sweat dripping down her back, as she stood frozen in her kitchen. How? She knew for certain she locked the front door. And yet, there it was, the creak. She turned, breath hitching as she felt the air grow heavier. The door creaked open, an invitation to darkness. Her children clutched their toys tighter, eyes wide with fear. When she tried to mask her panic, panic flooded her mind. What kind of nightmare had she stepped into? Each heartbeat thudded like a drum in her ears. She had to talk to someone. Reluctantly, she approached Mr. Harris, her neighbor with a charismatic smile that had always put her at ease. He assured her the neighborhood was safe but brushed off her questions about the odd behaviors she witnessed. "Every house has its quirks," he said with a chuckle that sent shivers down her spine, but there was something off about his stories. They wove through her mind, brushing against the tragic tale she had heard, a child who had gone missing long before she had arrived. The whispers echoed louder in her mind. Could there be a connection? Questions gnawed at her. Every corner of her new home felt tainted, and the idea of normalcy faded with the light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, as fear wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, she faced the abyss of her uncertainty. Whispers in dark corners became deafening, and shadows morphed into figures. She felt something lurking, forces that neither allowed her peace nor let her succumb into madness. Tension coiled tighter, pressing against her chest, gripping her heart. Standing alone in her kitchen, phone in hand, she hesitated. The line between neighborly trust and a sinister truth blurred beneath the flickering light. And then, a sudden, deafening knock shattered the silence. The sound echoed through the house, primal and fearsome, each boom a countdown to a horror she couldn't understand. Paralyzed, Karen held her breath. Who or what was lurking just beyond her door? The cold seeped through the cracks in the door, wrapping around Karen's skin like icy fingers. Each knock resonated like a warning bell echoing in her mind. She stood still, a statue, heart pounding in her throat. The children huddled behind her, their small bodies trembling, wide eyes reflecting every flicker of darkness around them. Another knock. It was different this time, more hurried, more frantic. The sound echoed through the house, filling every corner with dread. "Mommy," her son whispered, a tiny voice quaking under the pressure of fear. She turned slightly, trying to muster a reassuring smile, but it faltered against the vice tightening around her chest. The door was an ancient thing, its wood worn and weary. What lay beyond? The whispers grew louder, curling into her ears like smoke. They were no longer just faint murmurs, she could now hear the chilling tone of urgency. "Let us in." She stumbled back, eyes darting toward the window. Was Mr. Harris watching? The shadows in his yard crept closer. She could almost feel his gaze piercing through the blinds, heavy and suffocating. Panic surged once more. Whatever the darkness wanted, it was not for her children to hear. "Stay here, okay? I'll check," she whispered, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Desperation clawed at her instincts and she felt the walls of her home close in. She realized then that she had nowhere to run. Taking a deep breath, she approached the door, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the doorknob. It felt hot, too hot, like it had been recently touched by something unnatural. With a strong push, she turned it slowly, the creaking sound loud enough to signal her surrender. Outside, darkness enveloped her like a thick fog. She peered into the night, squinting. Nothing seemed out of place, no signs of life at all. The street was lifeless, the air heavy with an unseen force. Just silence, unending silence. "Maybe it was just my imagination," she muttered, heart still racing. She glanced back at her children, now wide-eyed shadows against the glow of the kitchen light. What had she brought them into? Then, another sound broke the stillness. The soft giggle she had heard on the phone rang out, mocking and sinister. It came from the backyard, slicing through her resolve. "Mommy, help!" it echoed back, the giggle twisted into a shriek that reverberated through her bones. Rushing back, she closed the door, but the sound followed her, drilling into her skull. "Don't let them in, don't let them in!" The voices were louder now, chanting, weaving around her. She sank down, clutching her children to her sides. The walls of her home seemed to lean closer, as if listening, as if they could feel the terror radiating off her. The furniture loomed like dark sentinels watching and judging in the quiet chaos. The line separating her reality from the horror was blurring. "Mommy, who is there?" her daughter asked, innocent but trembling. I don't know." It felt like a lie, but she had to keep them safe, even if that meant hiding from the truth. The atmosphere weighed down on them, the air thick and suffocating with prescience. A soft scratching noise erupted from the window, pulling her attention. She dared to look, and as she approached, dread coiling tighter, she glimpsed movement outside, a shape, a dark silhouette shifting in the reflections of the glass. The breath caught in her throat as the figure morphed. It was small, almost childlike. "Let us play." The words slithered into her ears, the voice a sing-song melody filled with malice. Was it possible? Was this a child? "Please, no," she whispered, heart pounding. She slammed the curtains shut, the sudden darkness swallowing her whole. But the voices only grew, echoing from outside, pulling her family into a vortex of terror. "Let us in. Let us in." In a moment, her pulse quickened. The phone rang again, its shrill tones slicing through the overwhelming noise. Grabbing it, her breath trembled. Could she dare answer? As her finger hovered over the screen, the figures loomed closer. Maybe this time, just maybe, she would uncover the truth hiding in the shadows, and in that moment, to her horror, the children shrieked. Something was pushing against the door. Something was trying to get in. The door buckled slightly, a high-pitched groan reverberating through the frame. Karen's heart raced. She squeezed her kids tighter against her, feeling their small bodies trembling against hers. The world outside was a void, and whatever was pushing on the door felt malicious, determined. Another strike against the door urged her to act. "We have to hide," she hissed, leading her children towards the darkened hall. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a hurricane inside her ears. They crawled into a small closet, wooden hangers scratched against their clothes as they squeezed in. She held her breath, fingers covering her mouth to stifle a whimper. The knocking transformed into a pounding, relentless and angry. Each thud jostled her thoughts, drowning out rationality. "Mommy, what if it comes inside?" her daughter whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Shoo, it won't find us here," Karen replied, forcing courage into her voice. But the insidious giggles rang out again, surrounding them like a palpable presence. "Come play with us." It echoed in haunting harmonies, each note laced with menace, chilling her further. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. In its place came a whisper, soft yet unmistakable let us in. It felt like fingers threading through her mind, trying to pull her towards that increasingly hungry voice. She shuddered, urging her children not to move, not a whisper. Minutes dragged like hours, with the only sound being their barely audible breaths and the muted whispers outside. An oppressive weight settled, thickening the air. Then, without warning, the electricity flickered and died, plunging them into a suffocating black. "Mommy?" Her son's voice trembled. "I'm scared, me too," she confessed, hating the weakness in her words. "But we have to stay quiet." In the inaudible backdrop, something shifted outside the closet. A sudden crash echoed from the hallway. Her body tensed, senses heightened. Was it inside? Was it coming for them? Panic surged. Before she could register her fear, a loud scraping pierced through the silence, nails clawing against the floor, dragging closer. It sounded like something dragging its body, lost and searching. One of the kids whimpered, and Karen quickly shushed them, her heart thudding wildly. Everything felt impossibly slow, yet accelerated. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of a childlike giggle, echoing in the dark. "Mommy, it's outside the door," whispered her daughter, her voice shaking. The door creaked open with a slow, almost mocking motion. Light from the hallway spilled in, illuminating the dark closet where their forms were still hidden. But just as she thought it was safe, a scratching sound echoed closer. "Oh God!" Karen pressed her hands tight over their mouths, a suffocating silence wrapping around them. The light swayed, revealing a small figure just outside, standing completely still. "Let us in," the voice came again, sweet and eerie, unsettlingly familiar yet twisted. It looked like a child, but the dark shadow it cast seemed like a thing hungry for laughter, hungry for something sinister. A choking sensation gripped Karen's throat. She grabbed her phone. She needed to call for help, but it was dead, lifeless in her palm. What now? She felt her children stiffen beside her, pulse racing, hearts synchronized in terror. Just then, the disembodied voice piped up again, "Why won't you play with us?" The moment stretched taut, the tension ready to snap. Just as she was reaching for the door handle, one of her children gasped, pointing into the shadows. Behind the figure was another and another. The fear cloaked her like a shroud. How many were there? As the figures multiplied, their laughter filled the air, sinister and mocking. They were closing in, darkness drawing tighter around her family. "What do we do?" Her son whispered wildly. She could only shake her head, heart racing toward a point of no return. With the laughter pulsating and shadows shifting, a realization struck her like a crushing blow. They were outnumbered. There was no escape, not anymore. "Mommy," the children pleaded. Karen knew the truth, but it cut deep. There was only one way, one desperate chance to protect them now. She stood up, mustering every ounce of strength. And just as the figures lurched forward, she took a step into the hallway, ready to face the darkness head-on. But was it too late? As she stepped forward, a voice cut through the chaos. "You shouldn't have opened the door." What awaited her in that darkness? Karen's heart thudded in her ears, drowning out the sinister laughter that echoed through the hallway. Each step she took felt like wading through molasses, each inch drawing her closer into a parade of shadows. The pallid light slashed across the figures, revealing unnatural eyes that glinted with malevolence. She knew she was stepping into a trap, but she had no choice. "Stay behind me," she whispered fiercely to her children, though her voice trembled. Panic churned in her stomach, a tempest threatening to spiral out of control. She could feel their small bodies pressing against her, warmth pooling beneath her grip. In the backs of their minds, they must have sensed the danger, the unyielding pull of the darkness. "Play with us," the voices seemed to slink around her, slathering her with ice. She squinted into the shadows, trying to count how many figures stood before her, but they bled into one another, like a grotesque amalgamation of childhood innocence twisted by something sinister. Each figure was erratic, limbs moving in unnatural ways. Some appeared to be footless, dragging themselves closer across the floor, while others bled like shadows coiling around their frames. Desperation clawed at her. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice breaking point. One of the figures tilted its head in a grotesque mimicry of a child. "We want to play a game." Its face twisted into a grin, too wide for any human mouth. The laughter shifted from taunting to harmonized shrieks, reverberating through Karen's bones. "No!" she yelled, lunging backward, yanking her children through the doorframe as thick dread filled the air. They stumbled into the hallway, and a moment of stillness enveloped them, making the darkness feel alive, a breathing, shifting entity. In that fleeting instant of silence, a realization exploded in her mind: the dark craved their fear. It fed off it. "We need to go. Now." She started to sprint down the corridor, her kids clinging tightly to her. The floors creaked beneath their frantic steps, echoing like thunder in the silence of the house. The figures released their laughter, a cacophony of glee that trailed after them like a malignant shadow. As they raced through the maze of the house, Karen cursed under her breath, trying to recall the layout in this all-consuming nightmare. Suddenly, the original door they had entered so confidently stood in front of her, ominous and expectant. "Mommy!" "The door!" her son cried, pointing back behind her. She halted, the shriek of her heartbeat pounding through her skull. There it was again, those ghostly figures stood behind them, slipping through the air like smoke, blocking their escape. The small hallway felt suffocating now, the walls closing in as if the house itself were alive, trapping them within its sinister embrace. No choice lay before her. Turning towards the door, she pushed against its frail wooden surface, the cold knob turning lifelessly under her shaking hand. Was it locked? Had they been trapped in their own refuge? "Do you want to join us?" the figures chanted, their voices layered like an echoing dream. With no time left to decide, she shouldered the door open, ready to plunge into whatever waited outside. The pungent air flooded in, a heavy enchantment clung to it, shifting the atmosphere. And then she saw them. Darker figures, hulking shadows loomed just outside the threshold, illuminated by the muted light of the moon. They were waiting, their eyes gleaming with a hunger that rattled her core. "Mommy, where do we go?" her daughter begged, pressing against her side. But before she could answer, the shadows surged forward, displacing the air around them, leaving no room for escape. Breath caught in her throat, as she was swept deeper into terror, a realm that transcended the bounds of her understanding. In an explosion of movement, she reached for her children, but the darkness surged with an unnatural force, tearing them apart. "Karen!" the voice screamed, echoing over the distortion of laughter. Everything spun. As confusion enveloped her, one thought screamed clear: had she made it worse by stepping into the unknown? Would they all be lost to those lurking shadows, forever ensnared by twisted innocence? And then a whisper brushed against her ear, chilling and familiar: "You can't escape us." What did that truly mean? Had the shadows become her children, or had they never been hers at all? Karen's vision blurred as she stumbled into the chaos. The laughter grew louder, a sickening chorus that twisted up her spine. Panic pulsed through her, a cruel mockery of hope, as she spun in every direction, searching desperately for her children among the shadows. "Mommy!" It was her son's voice, panic-laced with confusion, cutting through the cacophony. She reached out, but grasped only air. "Stay close. I'm here," she cried, though her voice felt swallowed by the darkness. The shadows loomed, swirling, more alive than the walls around them. They pulsed to the rhythm of her fear, throbbing, beckoning, hungry. She turned again, blinking hard, focusing on the figures emerging from the vast nothing. They were closer now, grotesque imitations of innocence, their mouths stretching into ghastly grins. "Join the game," they chanted, the words rasping along her skin like claws. "Get away from us!" she screamed, flinging herself forward, instincts screaming to rescue her children. She could feel the shadows tugging at her, trying to pull her back into their murky depths. Lights flickered overhead. For a brief moment, she stared into their sinister faces bathed in pale illumination. They seemed to ripple, shifting as if underwater. Her heart pounded in protest, a war drum urging her onward. Where are you? Karen's voice cracked, frustration igniting her desperation that a sudden burst of movement left her breathless. She caught a fleeting glimpse of tiny bodies, her children. They stood frozen by the corner, wide, terrified eyes searching for her. Mommy! They reached out, two desperate hands breaking her heart. No! She bellowed, launching herself towards them. Just as she grasped their hands, a chill swept through her, an icy grip that latched onto her soul, paralyzing her. The seething laughter soared again, vibrant and euphoric, swirling around them like a hurricane. They pulled her children from her grasp. Playtime is the best time. The figures danced closer, swirling in a macabre version of a childhood game. No! The word erupted from her, fueled by fear and love. She fought to wrench her children back, but the darkness cascaded around them, stronger, deeper. The shadows clung to her limbs, encasing her in their clammy embrace. Suddenly, a memory flared in her mind, a long-abandoned trunk in her attic, filled with remnants of a life before. Some games were never meant to be played. Could the same be true for the shadows that toyed with them now? Mommy, please, her daughter sobbed, eyes round and pleading. The shadows snarled back, a distorted echo of her daughter's innocence. With raw determination, Karen shouted words she hardly understood. We don't fear you. You are nothing. For a terrifying second, silence reigned. The shadows recoiled, trembling in reaction, and in that narrow window, she aimed to break through the oppressive darkness once and for all. Forcing one foot in front of the other, she charged forward. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, morphing and twisting as if the house sought to confound them. But they were close. She could almost feel the warmth of her children's hands again. Keep running! She barked, and they matched her urgency, pumping their small legs, fear igniting a primal survival instinct. Yet, just as they neared the threshold of escape, the whispers intensified, insistent, wrapping around her thoughts. You can't run. You won't win. The exit loomed, a gaping maw in the dark, but just as she reached for it, the darkness surged, slithering beneath her feet, tripling her weight in dread. One more burst of effort, a last-ditch surge, and they tumbled out into the open air, gasping. Adrenaline coursed through them as they flung themselves into the night. But as the figures lingered just beyond the light, watching, waiting, Karen, the whispers coiled around her once more, echoing their promise, this isn't the game, it's just the beginning. Her breath hitched as she turned back, the shadows looming even larger now. The question loomed over her like a specter: was this escape truly an escape, or just another trap? And then, within the lingering dark, a sharp realization pierced her: there were games that were never meant to end. The night had only just begun to play. Karen gasped for air, the cold night wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Her heart thudded against her ribs, a frantic reminder of the lurking terror just beyond the edge of the light. She pulled her children close, feeling their small, trembling bodies against her. We made it, we're safe. She whispered, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. The laughter echoed, taunting her, as if the dark knew her every thought. She looked over her shoulder, but the figures only lingered, shadows flickering like warped memories. Mommy, what are they? Her son asked, voice small and shaky. Karen swallowed hard, words sticking in her throat. How could she explain a nightmare that refused to vanish? They're just shadows, honey. Nothing real, she lied, forcing on a brave face, but the shadows didn't seem to listen. They glided closer, the light revealing their true horror: a twisted form, part puppet, part nightmare, with limbs that jerked and extended unnaturally. The children clung to her, and she shielded them with her body, anxiety bubbling hot in her chest. Keep moving, she commanded, steering them away from the light, into the depths of the unknown. The path ahead narrowed, shaped by the surrounding darkness. She felt as if the house was alive, contorting to trap them. Twisted branches loomed above, clawing at the sky, their jagged edges blocking out the stars. A noise skittered through the air like nails on a chalkboard. The joyless laughter turned into whispers that twisted around her like a noose, growing louder with every step. Why do you resist? You belong to us. They ran as if the shadows were breathing down their necks, the sense of being hunted consuming them. Even now, the thought of escape felt like a cruel trick. Mommy. Her daughter's voice cracked through the fear. What if they catch us? Keep going. Karen urged, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She wished she could shake off the dread that clung to her like a second skin. Just ahead, she spotted a slight bend in the hall that opened into a vast room. They darted in, the chill in the air turning electric. The room was cluttered with remnants of the house's past old furniture, a broken mirror, dust-laden toys long abandoned. At the center was a heavy trunk, broken and warped. Look! A game! Her son exclaimed, reaching for it. Fear surged through Karen, the memory of the attic flashing in her mind. No! Don't touch it! But it was too late. The trunk snapped open. She felt an unrelenting pull, like the house wanted her to witness whatever lay within. A cloud of dark mist curled out, escaping as if it were alive, swirling as it reached the children. Mommy! Their cries rang out, terror piercing her sanity. She flung herself towards them, snatching them away from the haze. The trunk wobbled, hints of laughter spilling from it like an echo. Play with us forever. The shadows in the room deepened, tendrils stretching towards them, almost welcoming. Karen couldn't breathe, fear clawing at her throat. What was happening? Were they still trapped? We have to go. She yelled, pulling her children to their feet. They stumbled back, but the whispers intensified, urging them to stay. The air crackled, thick with unseen danger. What do they want? Outside, the world seemed to mock their plight. The shadows flickered like dancers just beyond reach, fluid and inviting. The night no longer offered safety but an open invitation to madness. Pulling her children tighter, Karen felt the weight of hopelessness crash over her. Was this a game they could never escape? Would they always be the hunted? Then she remembered the trunk. Whatever had awakened there could lead to their salvation or their doom. Can she unlock the secrets before the shadows consume them? Be brave. Follow me. She urged them once more, plunging into the darkness that awaited her. Was she ready to confront the horrors within that trunk? The laughter echoed once again, but this time it felt different, familiar, almost as if it recognized her voice. As they stepped closer, Karen couldn't shake the sense that the true game was just about to unfold. Karen's heart raced as she stepped closer to the trunk. The darkness seemed to pulse around her, thick like fog, whispering her name. It felt wrong, everything felt wrong, but she couldn't waver. Not now. Mommy, I don't like this. Her daughter whimpered, stepping back, wide-eyed and shaking. Karen turned to see her son lurching toward the open trunk, drawn as if by an unseen force. No, stay close. She hissed, snagging her boy's arm before he could disappear into that void. He pouted, searching her face for understanding. But, Mommy, it's calling us. His voice was fragile, tinged with curiosity and dread. It's a lie. We have to go. Karen's tone brokered no argument. She glanced at the swirling mist again, which had darkened further as if sensing their resistance. The laughter inside the trunk morphed into murmurs, enchanting and sinister. Just a little game, it's so much fun. She couldn't let them get trapped. The thought burned inside her like a fever. Bursts of laughter filled the air again, now echoing like a dark symphony in her mind. It twisted her thoughts, pushing her to come closer. Whatever comes from that trunk isn't our friend. We have to run. She felt a chill crawl up her back, teeth chattering in the ice-cold atmosphere. Somewhere within, fragments of her sanity shattered, pieces of fear and desperation churned into a frenzy. Karen turned, the shadows thickening behind her. Time stretched and curled, distorting reality as she gripped her children's hands tighter. They stumbled backward, guided by her frantic energy, but the shadows wrapped around their ankles, coiling like serpents, pulling them toward the trunk's allure. The room shifted, walls refracting as if painted by another's brush, past and present colliding. We can help you, Karen. Why fight it? The whispers were insistent, promising comfort in the chaos. No. She screamed into the darkness, the tremor in her voice betraying her fear. Suddenly, a light flickered, illuminating a corner where a mirror leaned at a slant. Karen's breath caught. She recognized the reflection, but it was strange, otherworldly. Her face was twisted, mirroring not just fear, but satisfaction in the chaos unfolding deep within her. Shadows also danced. Mommy! Mommy! Her children's voices broke through, frantic and pleading. Anguish tightened her throat as she turned, heart slamming in her chest. Look at me, the shadows urged, you can join us, we're all waiting. Desperation pierced through the haze. They were losing time. Whatever the entity had planned, she wouldn't let it happen to her children. She tore her gaze from the mirror, ripping free from that disorienting hold. She turned sharply back to the trunk, and through the mist, she swore she could see glimmers of faces, lost souls begging for release. We're leaving! Karen shouted, pulling her children toward the far wall. Just as they reached the edge, a shadow lunged from the trunk, stretching and twisting with terrifying speed. It lunged, grasping for their feet, tendrils of darkness just inches from their heels. With instinct guiding her, Karen hurled her body forward, dragging her kids through a narrow gap beside the trunk, feeling the cold brush of the unseen force against her skin. Please, please, please. She chanted, her voice rising as their shoulders snuck through the tight space. With one last push, they broke through into a room that felt less claustrophobic, the air heavy but somehow lighter. She turned to catch a glimpse of the chaos they had escaped. The trunk slammed shut, the shadows retreating back inside. Breathless, still clenching her children in protective urgency, Karen staggered into the new space, a small, dimly lit room lined with more mirrors, each reflecting their fear. But this room held more than mere reflections. Karen, a voice echoed from the mirrors, familiar but haunting. Her knees weakened. Time froze. She sank to the floor, realizing the plead belonged to someone she knew. Help me! The chilling realization gripped her heart. The shadows weren't just enemies, they were preying on her past. The reflection turned, revealing a face she never wanted to see again. It was a child, a lost version of herself. What had they awakened? What piece of her own history had returned to threaten them all? Panic flooded her senses as the mirrors began to warp, pulling shadows from places she had fearfully locked away. She had to face it. The game was far from over. Mommy, what do we do? Her son cried, his eyes wide. The darkness beckoned again. This time, it felt like it knew them, like it always had. You can't escape us forever, it whispered, each syllable a thread weaving into her mind. There was only one way to break the cycle. But was she strong enough? Would facing her deepest fears swallow her whole? The question echoed into the suffocating silence, surrounding them like the darkness itself. What would she have to sacrifice to save her children? The mirrors shimmered, their surfaces swirling in a dance of shadows and light, almost alive. Karen's breath hitched as the echoes of the voice grew louder, more insistent. Help me, help me! It wasn't her child calling for assistance, but rather a haunting melody from her own youth. Get away from the mirrors! She shouted, clutching her children tightly, pulling them toward a corner, away from the reflections that taunted her with images of a life she wished to forget. Her son scrambled to escape the grasp of the phantoms, but Karen felt the pull of familiarity. Stay with me! She gasped, willing herself to stay focused. She could feel the chill of the air around them, wrapping around her like the fingers of the many lost souls she could sense trapped behind crystalline facades. Why are they calling you, Mommy? Her daughter squeaked, her voice trembling as she pressed against her mother's leg. Karen's heart sank. I don't know, I don't want them to take you. She could feel the darkness creeping in, driving its icy tendrils deep into the corners of her mind, secrets bubbling to the surface, things she'd sworn to keep buried. The laughter from the trunk echoed in the chamber, a manic reminder that they were not safe, not yet. Join us, the voices crooned, the shadows flaring, shaping themselves into silhouettes that resembled familiar figures. Was that her younger self she saw? Was it taunting her or begging for salvation? "Mommy, what if we look?" her son asked. "What if it's just us?" The innocence in his words stung, reminding her of how far they had come. How much they had endured. "No," she snapped, shaking her head violently. "Don't look. It's a trap." But already, she could see the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. The mirrors rippled again, distorting the reality around them. Reflections of laughter twisted into screams, visions of a childhood long lost enveloped her. Images flashed before her, an abandoned playground, her own footsteps echoing in the void, shadows lurking just out of sight. Memories of fear, abandonment, and longing clawed at her heart. "Help me," the voice sighed again, rising in pitch, startling her back to the moment. It was almost a plea now, a desperate call for rescue. But whose voice was it? Her childhood self? Or something darker hidden in her past? She attempted to push the thought away, but it remained lodged in her mind, twisting and gnawing at her resolve. Suddenly, the mirror in front of her began to crack, running like spider webs across a fragile surface. Something was trying to break through. She felt the tremor of fear radiate from her children, the room thrumming with chaotic energy. She had to do something, she had to act before the darkness consumed them all. "Grab my hand!" she shouted, reaching for her children as the mirror shattered in an explosive release of shadows, filling the room with swirling blackness. A gust of wind swept through, chilling her to the bone. She felt it, the grip of the shadows upon her, snaking around her wrists, trying to pull her back towards the mirror. "No! Not again!" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "Mommy!" her daughter cried, the world around them dissolving into chaos. Karen pulled with every ounce of strength she had. "Hold on!" she gasped, yanking her children toward the door at the far end of the room. She had to break free, had to find a way out of this nightmare before it swallowed them whole, but the whispers became louder, demanding her attention. "Join us, stay here forever, what lies ahead?" she screamed into the storm of shadows. "What do you want from me?" A pause. And then, their answer rang out, chilling her marrow, a quiet certainty entwined in their words. "Everything." In that moment, she stumbled upon the threshold. Though she couldn't see the way ahead, she knew a choice awaited them. To face their innermost fears or flee into the unknown. "Mommy, what if we can face it together?" her son suggested, brave in his innocence, but the shadows pulsed with laughter. She looked at them, saw the determination mirrored in their small faces. Was she ready to face whatever lay ahead? To confront the demons of her past one final time? As she pulled her children closer, the darkness swirled and beckoned, promising answers and more horror. What awaits them in the beyond? The question crackled in the air like static, a deadly promise. Would they find salvation, or would they become another echo in the shadows? The moment they crossed the threshold, the world shifted. Karen could barely register the change. One moment they were facing the tempest of shadows, the next, the three of them stood in a vast emptiness, a surreal landscape devoid of color, a haunting twilight that felt both familiar and alien. "Where are we?" her son whispered, clutching his sister's hand tightly, fear glistening in his wide eyes. Karen glanced around, trying to anchor herself in this new reality. The air felt thick, almost viscous, as if the breeze carried the weight of countless lost souls. She could hear them faintly, a faint whispering echo that seemed to come from all directions, growing more unified and intense. "Mommy, I'm scared," her daughter whimpered, her voice a tender tremor against the oppressive silence. "Stay close," Karen urged, forcing herself to sound steady, even as panic gnawed at her gut. "We'll find a way back," but a cold wave of fear washed over her when she realized that there was no visible path to follow, no doorway to return through. They were isolated in this abyss, and the whispers began to take shape, becoming almost coherent. Karen, it was her name, like a haunting chant, drawn out, full of longing. "Come play with us," she shivered. The sound was eerily comforting yet horrifying at the same time, as memories wrapped around her like a shroud. It was the voices from her childhood, the laughter of friends she'd left behind, a rotten echo of youthful innocence twisted by despair. "Mommy!" her daughter cried, her face pale and glistening with tears. "What do they want?" "I don't know," she snapped, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. "But we can't listen. We have to stay together." But already, Karen was beginning to feel the pull, the seductive promise of connection with the past. A nagging desire bubbled inside her, begging her to take a step closer to the shadows forming at the edges of the void. Karen turned, frantically tearing her gaze away from the movement, only to find the faces of her children reflecting her fear right back at her. The shadows surged forward, coalescing into distorted figures of those she once knew, friends, family, even figures from her past that long faded away. They raised their hands, beckoning her to join them, their faces twisted with expectant smiles. "Don't look!" Karen shouted, trying to pull her children back even as she felt a familiarity draw her in. "Those aren't our friends. They can't have you." A surge of wind whipped through the nothingness. It was colder here. She caught her breath as she felt something brush against her ankle, a thick, cold tendril of darkness trying to wind itself around her. She stomped down, trying to break free from its grasp. "Mommy!" her son's voice cracked in the whispering dark. "They're calling for us. What if we went to them?" "No!" Karen shouted with everything she had. "No! They're not real. They want to take us away." The whispers turned sharper, more insistent. "Join us, be one of us." Images flooded Karen's mind, her brother's laughter ringing out in a park, then suddenly giving way to his screams as he disappeared. Shadows of herself long gone replaying their childhood, memories twisted darkly like pretzels of despair. She felt her heart race, beating loudly against her chest, threatening to drown out every other sound. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble beneath them. The darkness rose, threatening to engulf them. Panic surged through her as she searched for something, anything that could anchor them in this nightmare. "We must run!" she yelled, her voice cracking. "We have to find a way out. Follow me." But just as she turned, determined to lead her children through the encroaching shadows, she saw them, a figure standing at the edge of the darkness, a shadowed outline watching them with piercing eyes and a knowing smile. It felt so familiar, and the recognition sent a shudder down her spine. "Karen," it hissed, the voice filled with the promise of clarity and chaos. "We've been waiting for you." She froze, dread flooding her veins. A choice loomed before her, heavier than the growing shadows. Turn back to the haunting call or step into the abyss. As she tightened her grip around her children's hands, the shadows whispered more enticingly than ever. Will they be the ones to set her free? Or will they dissolve into the belly of the darkness? Karen's heart pounded fiercely as she faced the apparition of her past. The familiar figure, surrounded by swirling shadows, seemed to beckon her closer, offering a grotesque comfort. She could feel something alive, twisted with memories she had buried long ago. The shadows pushed against her, attempting to draw her in, to make her part of them, part of their game. "Mommy, don't go!" her daughter cried, the tremor in her voice a raw reminder of what was at stake. Panic clawed at Karen's chest, and she could feel the weight of her children's fear anchoring her to that moment. "I want tea," she declared, digging her heels into the ground. "I will fight. I will protect you." She turned her fierce gaze toward the shadow that had once been familiar. "You don't own me." The figure's smile faded, growing darker. "You belong to us, Karen. You can't run from who you are." Shadows swirled, coiling tighter around her ankles, tugging at her resolve. She felt the cold grip of despair creeping in, tightening like a noose. The faces of her past whispered promises of belonging, echoing in mockery, but her children still looked to her, their trust a beacon in the abyss. "Hold on to me," she shouted, snatching them close, bracing against the pull of the shadows. With determination igniting her spirit, she recalled the trunk and the dark depths they had escaped. "We're not afraid of you. She shouted, the words crashing against the oppressive darkness. You can't take us. You're nothing but illusions. The laughter and whispers faltered, confusion flickering through the shadows. She charged forward, her children following closely, hearts racing as they pushed against the shadows. Keep moving. Don't listen. She encouraged, leading them through the swirling madness. Their connection, their bond was stronger than the darkness that sought to tear them apart. As they ran, Karen focused on her children, their warmth grounding her. Look for the light. She urged, seeing a faint shimmer break through the encroaching shadows. With each step, their footsteps echoed louder, breaking through the cacophony of whispers. Join us, the shadows hissed, desperate now, struggling to maintain their grip. But they thrived on fear, and Karen fed them none. You can't bring us back. She proclaimed, hope blossoming in her chest like a flame. We are free. She felt the shadows recoiling, losing their strength, losing their arms as they grasped at nothingness. They surged through the darkness, her family a singular force, a pulse of resistance against the looming void. And with one final push, they burst forth into a brightness that surged like drunk sunlight, illuminating every corner. The shadows shrieked, disintegrating into nothingness, melting away like fog under the sun. The world changed around them, shifting from the oppressive gloom into the vibrant clarity of the night. They stumbled onto solid ground, the cool air wrapping them in a different kind of embrace. Mommy! Her son cried, clinging tightly to her. We're safe. Breathing heavily, Karen held her children tight, the thrill of victory washing over her. Yes, yes. We're free. We did it. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but for the first time, they were tears of relief, of liberation. Gradually, shadows receded into the night, fading behind them. The laughter that had once tormented them was now a distant echo, replaced by the soothing sound of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. The neighborhood, once a place of dread, felt different in the moonlight, a place where they could heal, where they could find a normal life again. Hand in hand, they walked toward their home. The shadows may have been vanquished, but their memories would linger, twisting and reshaping them. Huddled together, Karen whispered to her children, no matter what happens, we will always fight for one another. They nodded, their faces reflecting understanding and courage. In that moment, she knew that true strength lay in facing fears, acknowledging the past, and firmly choosing to step forward together. The night had shifted from a haunting reminder into an embrace of hope, a canvas where they could paint their future without shadows. And as they stepped inside, closing the door against the lingering whispers, Karen felt the final weight lift off her shoulders. They were free, they were together, and there would be no games left to play. So, if you ever find yourself in the dark, remember, true escape comes from confronting what haunts you. You need to subscribe now for more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us bring you more thrilling conclusions. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us build our community together and chase more shadows away.